I've been working on a digital painting project for about 6 months and been posting an image a day to Facebook. Recently, I did a workshop tutorial which I found extremely helpful and totally changed the direction of my work. I'll have information on the tutorial at the end of the program. This is just an overview of the process. It takes me 3 to 4 hours to complete one of these images, so it's pretty difficult to give you one tutorial that tells you all the detail. But I'm going to do an overview of the whole process because many people have asked, well, how do you do this? As I get a better understanding of myself, I've only been doing this for about 4 days, this particular style. I will make more tutorials breaking down the process for you. Now, I've been a photographer for about 40 years and a painter for about 5. And this is the most impressive thing I've seen in a long time. But I hope you enjoy it. The outcome of any manipulation of an image depends upon how strong an image you start with. This image has a really strong compositional element with the boats in the front. There are other items in the picture that are distracting, and the purpose of this operation will be to eliminate them and put the emphasis on what has the greatest visual interest within the image. Within that, you have to pick what your center of focus is going to be, and what I want it to be is these two boats, and mainly on this one and the lines in the front here. So where everything we're going to do throughout the whole process is going to be to place the emphasis where we want it to be. So the first thing I did was go in with the clone tool and just take out everything that I thought would be a distraction so I don't have to deal with it. You don't have to be real neat about this because you're going to destroy most of this, but what happens is you're just not going to have to deal with those things in there that you didn't want to have in the first place. Once you've done that, you need to go into your highlight shadow adjustment and increase the openness of the image. I've brought the shadow detail up because we want to be able to pick up as much of that shadow detail in the process as possible. And I've brought more texture into the snow so that I'll have that to work with as well. The next part of the process is to expand your canvas because we want to have area to paint out into so that we can not have the hard rectangular edges to deal with and the image won't look like it has square edges. So the way we do that is we first go over to our brushes and we go down to the mixing brush, and then we need to go on up and pick a brush that's appropriate for this, and what I'm using is DR dry brush. Now the brush you pick will determine the nature of your painting, and I want this to have a fairly coarse blended look, so I'm using this particular brush. Now you want to start with your brush at a fairly large setting, and you really can't tell what it's going to do until you use it. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to take it down a little bit. You just want to break up the edges. So we're going to go around this and get rid of any indication that there's a straight edge on the image. And you want to pull these out and push it in so they end up with a very random edge. So we go all the way around the edge. You can see the brush is not keeping up with my computer, or my computer is not keeping up with the brush, but that's all right. Okay, now it still looks like there's an edge in here, so I want to randomize that some more. Okay, now we have that edge broken down. Now the object is to go in and eliminate all of the detail from the image, but try and maintain the integrity of the areas of color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the brush size again. And again, you can only find this out by testing it. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to go through is I'm going to go through and eliminate. Now I don't want that to show at all, so I'm going to pull this blue right down in there to get rid of that. And I'm going to pull this blue across. Now I'm holding the brush down and dragging it. Now I'm using a Wacom tablet with an art brush. You really can't do this process unless you have some kind of a tablet to work with. It's really hard to do using a mouse. Now, when I have areas of color, I try and maintain them. So see, I'm going along. Now, there are two ways to use the brush. One is you can put the brush on the tablet and drag it, and you get this smeared look. And for your backgrounds, that's good. But when we come in here and we start working on this closer detail, you can just hold the brush down and slightly pivot it. And it helps you keep the integrity of the shape, but just destroy all of the detail. What we want to do is maintain the color integrity, but get rid of all of the detail. Now, this usually takes me about 35 to 40 minutes to do this, so I'm going to stop and jump ahead so that you can see what it looks like when I'm done with this process. Okay, I have completed randomizing the image, and you can see how I've maintained blocks of color. Now, you can actually go in with the brush even though that you're done doing this, taking out all the detail. If you go with a fairly small brush, you can still go in and adjust what the image looks like by pushing around just the color that you already have in there. Now, at this point, it should begin to look like a painting. You should be able to identify strong graphic shapes and blocks of color. And your eye should begin to move. You see how your eye moves across this edge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the original image. This is the image with all of the detail in it. I destroyed all the texture, maintained all the color. Now what I'm going to do is put that image, put the original image with all the detail on top. And then I'm going to put a mask in. And what I will do is I will paint through the mask to reveal detail. And that's how I bring the detail back into the image. See, if I shut this off, there it is without the detail, there it is with the detail. And I've only brought the detail back into the areas that I want to see. So I'll demonstrate it. If I come on up here and I go to the brush, and I've made this into a black mask, so only the information will show through when I open it up. So I'm going to come down here and go to white, which will give us 100% transparency. Whoops, I have to have it on the mask. And you can see how I can bring as much detail as I want back into the image. The object is to bring the minimal amount of information back into the image. Now you can see if I make this larger, I've made that darker here, and that's going to bring back that image detail, which I don't want. So I'm going to go on up and do undo on this. The next step is to add your canvas texture. And I did it by going down, going to pattern. And in my patterns, I have a canvas texture. And then I just click OK, and that brings it in. And now what I'm going to do, again, I've used a mask, and I've only brought through what I want to show. You see how I've only brought in the information I want to show. And on this layer, I have used a watercolor type brush, which gives me all of this interesting type watercolor looking effects. But again, you have to use these masking layers. That's how we control what comes into the image. We use this one to reveal detail. We use this one to reveal what we want to see through the drawing paper. once you do this, you can't get the contrast back up because we don't want to bring all the detail in, so we're sort of working it soft. So then what we have to do is add a contrast brightness adjustment, and you can see how that brings that up. Now you can adjust that to do as much or as little as you want. And you see, by using that adjustment layer, it gives us the ability to control that. Now I added another canvas texture, brought it in here so it gives it a much more textured paper look. Did it the same method, just going down and going to pattern. Now you can double click on this and this comes back up, and you can change the coarseness of the paper, which really radically changes the appearance of the image. Now once I got this all done, I wanted to add a textured layer to make it look like a little bit more painterly. So I went out and copied my layer, brought it in, pasted it in, and there it is. And again, I control this by what it's on multiply. I go to, it changes totally depending on which blending layer I use. And I wanted that one. Now again, it's a little flat, so again I went up to my brightness and contrast, added another brightness and contrast layer to bring it up where I want it to be. So this is the end product. It took me about 2.5 hours to do this because there's a lot of very slow, detailed work in here and bringing up exactly what you want to bring up and bringing it up at the opacity that you want it to come. This is a very quick overview of the process. I'm going to try and do videos that will go into detail on each individual step of the process. But at this point, I haven't been doing it long enough myself to really understand how I want to break it down for you. But there'll be more videos, but this is just an overview of how the process works. I found this site very helpful. She has a couple tutorials that show you how to use layers, and they're very good. But the most impressive thing weren't these. These were very helpful. But under her workshops, she has this workshop that is excellent. It's really exceptionally good. And the nice thing about it is she gives you all of the filters, tutorials. There's 8 hours at least worth of video. It's very in-depth, and she talks a lot more about how to use the layers, as I do in my workshop, in my work, and how to use the blending brushes. It's well worth the money. Now, if you really want to learn this, this would be a great place to start.